Hello my dear sewing friends, it's Alisa here, and today I want to copy a pair of my favorite store-bought pants. Now these are actually pretty form-fitting. As you can see, we have pockets in the front. There's a single welt pocket in the back. There's also a little dart on the back as well. And at the center front, we have a zipper fly. You can also see that these are really well worn. I had these for probably close to a decade, and you can see wear and tear on the knees. Some of the seams are coming apart. I've also spilled some stuff on it. It doesn't wash out anymore. So I was actually saving these for an upcycle for my little one because fabric is still pretty good in some areas. But before I do anything to them, I thought, you know what, let me dive a little bit deeper and see what I actually like about these pants and make them into a pattern. Now, I've done a couple of videos on the channel in the past where we have taken our favorite garment and then we have turned that into a pattern. We've done that to a favorite t-shirt, also a pair of really simple pull-on pants when there's quite a bit of ease, so you don't have to worry about closures or any darts. You just pull them on. And actually a jacket that you see right behind me was sort of like a combination between a couple of techniques, and one of them was copying a pattern from one of my favorite jackets that I own. Now I'm definitely on the side of, just draft it from scratch, but I can tell you that there's something about copying your favorite garment because that allows you to analyze what it is that you actually like about it. And once you do figure that out, it's sort of like a really valuable piece of knowledge that you can put into your sewing toolbox. With all that being said, I haven't found a 100% fail-proof method of copying your favorite garments because no matter how simple is the garment, there's still a little bit of guesswork and still a healthy dose of assumptions that are going on. So today I will try to do my absolute best in order to explain what I do, how I do it, and why I do it. Now, one of the methods of turning your ready-to-wear garments into patterns is a rub-off method. And I must say I don't use it at all because I much prefer finding a reference point or sort of like an anchor and working from that. So for example, when I copy my favorite t-shirt, my anchor point or my reference point is center back and center front, and I work from there. Now in this case, I can actually lay my front pattern piece of these pants really well because the front is smaller than the back, and therefore it lays almost flat. So I think in this case, it is actually going to work. However, as a first step, I'm still going to mark my reference points because I think that's part of the success. So with my front pattern piece as flat as I can, I'm going to go down all the way to the bottom, to the hem. And as you can see, I'm working with my garment right sides out. That's my personal preference because I'm going to mark my seam allowances later, because your seam allowances will largely depend on what kind of technique and what kind of fabric you're going to be using for your project. I also like it because you can see the seams over here pretty clearly without seam allowances flapping in the way. Now what I want to do is I want to mark the grain line and the center of the pant leg, which is going to be 2 in 1. For that, I'm going to take my right angle ruler and a little bit of chalk. Now before you do this, make sure that your chalk or whatever you're using can actually wash out from the garment. This doesn't need to be necessarily saved because these are well worn, and the next step for them was going to be an upcycle anyway. And as I mentioned, there's a healthy dose of assumption and guesswork, so that's what we gotta do right now. So 16 centimeters right across, so half of that is going to be 8, and I'm going to mark right over here. I'm going to do the same here at the hem. Here at the hem I had 15, so 7.5 is right in the middle. And then using my straight angle ruler, I placed it right on the hem like so, and then connected those 2 points. I'm going to take my long ruler and I'm going to place it on the bottom of the hem. And I'm going to continue that line straight up. Now here, because of the wear, I can clearly see where is my knee. So here I'm actually going to create a horizontal line. So that way that can be another reference point for myself as well. And that way I can also ensure that this line continues straight up, because now I can place my right angle ruler over here and continue this. And as you can see, all the way to the top. Now here I want to mark another reference point, which is going to be the crotch line, from the very tip of the crotch point all the way to the side seam, and make a line. And this is what we currently have. Now I want to take a piece of paper and I want to copy these lines and the distances between them. Now this is what I have right now, and all of the lines correspond in length and in width to the lines that I have marked on the front leg. Now I will take this, I will place it on top of my pant leg, and I also want to grab some pins, but please be careful. If you're intending to wear this garment further, make sure that these pins are not going to leave any markings. And now I want to align it first at the hem, so the bottom line should be in line with the hem, and then I want to make sure that the center vertical line is the same and aligned with the center vertical line that I have on my pants. And then I want to pin it all the way along, matching as I go. And now, once done, I'm ready to mark the side seams and everything else with the rub-off method. But first, what I find really easy to do is sort of like feel the seam with your fingertips and with your fingernails. And if you actually press very lightly, that sort of marks the way, because you can actually feel the seam. You feel the seam sort of like puckering. So if you do that, that might be a little bit easier than going with a pencil at first. The leg itself is usually pretty straightforward. The crotch area here is quite difficult, so you'll have to try to lay it as flat as you can in order to get that accurate imprint. Once done, let's go ahead and take it off and tidy up all of the markings. I'll use a brown marker and a long ruler to now, to the best of my ability, recreate those lines that we just sort of like imprinted on our pattern paper. As you can see, the line over here doesn't necessarily align with the initial measurement of the knee that I placed over here before we started imprinting the side seams, and that's all right. Right now I'm just trying to figure out how they're positioned, and then if needed, I will blend them together. As you can see, the front pattern piece is almost ready, and you can probably also notice that I didn't mark the position of the pocket, neither of the zipper fly, because those are all very easily maneuvered and drafted pieces. Right now, I'm interested in the front pattern piece as a whole. And also, before moving to the back pattern piece, I want to double check measurements at the midpoints between the anchor points. So for example, I want to take this section, I want to measure that, and it measures 14 centimeters, so I'll find half of that, and then I'll measure across from the zipper fly all the way to the side seam, and I want to repeat exactly the same steps over here and compare the measurements. And if measurements over here on our pattern draft does not align, then we have to adjust it and see where did we go wrong. As you can see in green, I have marked the adjustments and also the quarter lines that I use in order to double check all of the measurements. So I've actually shorted myself a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch here on the top, so that is the adjustment. Also, I made it initially a little bit wider here at the center front, so again, there's the adjustment as a result of double checking, and here on the leg as well. As a final step, I'm going to compare the side seams and the inseam on the pant to the pattern draft. For that, I'm going to take my measuring tape. I'm going to walk it along the side seam very carefully on the pant leg itself, and then whatever I get, I'm going to double check to the same side seam on my pattern draft. Alright, the front pattern piece is done, and now it's time to move on to the back pattern piece, and the first two steps are going to be exactly the same. We are going to find the middle of the pant leg. This one is going to be a little bit more challenging because the actual seam line curves onto the front. So take your measuring tape and do the best that you can, measuring from seam to seam on the very hem of the pant leg. So I'm just trying to, there we go. And for me, that's 19.5 centimeters. Divide that in half and make a marking. I will transfer the marking for the knee on the back side as well from both sides over here. Find the crotch point over here, and I will start marking approximately. And here I want to create a straight line just like we did on the front, from the center of the pant leg that we just marked all the way to the crotch point. So I'll try to do my best. All right, now let's go ahead and transfer these points onto the pattern paper. And here's a quick reminder to myself that when I'm doing that, I need to copy not only what I see right in front of me, but also the measurement of the seam that curves to the other side. And here we have hem, knee, crotch. Here between the knee and the hem, you know what? I'm just going to connect these 2 points. That's how usually I draft my pant legs as well. Unless you have something really significant on the bottom that usually requires some adjustment, then I would do a midpoint and then measure and then have a 3-point reference and then connect them. But in my case, I'm just going to connect them like this, and we will double check a little bit later. However, between the knee and the crotch, I will do maybe even 2 more reference points because over here it's going to be quite curved. So from the knee, I'm going to do 10 centimeters up for you, and that might be a different number, and another 10 centimeters up, and I will square a line and measure the width and then reflect that on this pattern paper. I've decided that this area right before the crotch line, I'm going to divide in half one more time, and again reflect that on my pattern paper. And now I'm going to connect these points with really nice curved lines. As you can spot, some of these did not align, so a little bit later I'll go back and I'll double check and figure out what's going on over here. Alright, let's figure out what we're going to do about the back crotch, because in pants, crotch is definitely one of the most significant parts. Here I want to reflect this measurement on my pattern paper. And I also want to create one additional measurement. So I want to take my right angle ruler, place it on the crotch line, and I want to find a spot where this tip sort of meets the very top of the crotch curve. And I want to make a straight line. Now I want to measure this distance and the length of the line and place that on my pattern paper. Once we have that in this corner, let's do a 45-degree diagonal line, and we're going to measure that, and that is going to help us build a curve of the crotch. So that is 2 inches. So here at a 45-degree angle, again, we're going to do 2 inches, and that's how I usually build my crotch lines as well. And what I'm going to do next is from the top all the way to the bottom, I'm going to divide it in half, and then I'm going to measure the distance from the line all the way to the crotch curve, and I'm going to do the same over here. Now we can connect the top, this little point, the 2-inch mark on the diagonal, and also the crotch point over here. But if you actually place your pant leg as flat as you can, you might see that this area almost doesn't have any difference between the horizontal line. So just keep that in mind whenever you're going to be connecting these points. Then I grabbed my measuring tape and I measured this crotch curve, and I compared it to the crotch curve measurement right over here on the pants, and mine came up a little bit shorter. But you know what, I'm not going to adjust it just yet, because my guess is that this crotch curve actually stretched out due to so much wear. You saw the same thing happen right over here on the knee. So the fabric here doesn't sit flat because the knee stretched it out due to all of the wear throughout the years. So I have a feeling that this back crotch went through the same transformation, and you can see here I have a popped seam as well. So I have a feeling that it stretched out from the original measurement that it was cut. Now let's complete this side seam at the hip. For that, I'm going to take my pant and I'm actually going to roll the back side seam as flat as I can. So I want it to be as flat as I can right here against the side, like so. And now I want to align my crotch line on the pattern with the crotch line on the pant. Again, as much as I can, like so. And I also want to make sure that the grain aligns with the grain on the pattern as well, just like we did for the front pattern piece. And now I want to take my pencil and I want to outline the side seam. Then I want to take my measuring tape and I want to double check. I want to measure the side seam from the waistband all the way to this first marking, which was the crotch line. And I want to compare that measurement to what I have here on the paper. Now let's take this measurement from the side seam at the very top where it touches the waistband all the way to the tip of the crotch curve. 8.5 inches. Alright, mine is 9 inches, so somewhere something is 1/2 inch wider than it should be. After double checking everything, I did find a discrepancy and it was in the position of the side seam. So I went ahead and I marked this top line. And with that, I also marked the position of the dart. So I measured from the side seam all the way to the dart, marked that. And then of course, I also marked the length of the dart as well. And now I actually have to mark the volume of the dart. And over here I can actually see the dart volume. You can see the discoloration of the fabric and I can feel it with my fingers. So I'm going to take my measuring tape and I'm going to measure, and it seems like it's 1/2 inch, meaning that the dart volume is about 1 inch altogether. So I'm going to mark 1/2 inch on each side of the position of the dart that we marked. And here I'm going to add 1/2 inch on the side seam and on the center back. When I'm adding these measurements, I simply try to blend the new lines with the old lines and create a really nice smooth transition. I'm going to create the dart legs. Now to finalize the dart and this top line, I actually need to fold it in. That's how it will look, and I have to true up this top line. There we have it. Now before I'm ready to cut the test garment, I want to make sure that the side seams of the front and the back pattern piece align. So we have the hem, and I usually place one finger here on the hem, and then I want to make sure that the knee line is even, so it aligns at the knee, and then I walk the seam to make sure that the length of the seam matches, and it doesn't, by about 1/4 inch right over here. That's when I was making adjustment for the darts, so I need to make sure that I adjust it here again. There we go. And we're going to do the same for the inseam. I'm also going to start at the hem. That's great. The knees match from the knee. Let's walk the seam. And the back inseam is shorter, and my guess is that's right, 1/2 inch. And that's actually great because I'm going to ease in this part from the crotch point to the knee into the front pattern piece to give me better fit in the thigh. So that's actually great. And here again, just to double check, yep, these match. As I mentioned, there is a healthy dose of assumption and guesswork that is involved when we are copying patterns from ready-to-wear garments. So in my case, with this inseam and it being shorter 1/2 inch than the front inseam, it worked out in my favor. So now the last thing for us to do is to cut the patterns out, and you can add seam allowances as you cut your patterns from the fabric, like what I usually do, or you can add your seam allowances on the paper pattern. So here, I would suggest for you to give yourself 1/2 inch seam allowance just in case if you need to do some adjustment, so that way you don't have to recut the pattern one more time, but you can do it right then and there. So this would be your seam allowance. Alright, now that the pattern pieces are ready and we have double checked everything to the best of our abilities and the best that we could given the circumstances, now is the moment of truth and we have to put it all together. But here you have to remember one thing, and that is the actual fabric, the properties of the fabric from which your original pants were made. So for example, mine are stretch pants, and I'm assuming that this is cotton with quite some good amount of elastane in it. Therefore, when I'm making a test garment, I need to choose fabric that has very similar properties, because if I make it just out of cotton, chances are I won't be able to put them on because these pants do fit quite snug. So I'm going to cut 2 fronts mirrored and 2 backs mirrored, because you don't want 2 left legs and 2 right legs. You want 1 left leg and 1 right leg. So don't forget to cut these pieces mirrored. What I have marked here as the center of the pant leg is also going to be my grain line. And if you do need a guide on how to place your pant pattern on the fabric and cut it out, then I do have a very detailed video about that. But right now we're going to get onto the next step. For my mock-up, I'm going to be using this stretch denim, which I'm not exactly fond of in terms of the color and the actual print of the fabric. So I'm totally fine with using this up as a toile. But in terms of the properties of the fabric, I think that this is actually pretty close what the original pants were made out of. Alright, so for this test run, I'm not going to do pockets and I'm not going to do a zipper fly, and I'm not going to do a waistband either in case if we need to do some adjustments to the top of the pants. Now, usually if I would have been working on a gathered waistband, I would do a waistband just because that is a crucial part of the construction to begin with. But in this case, these are going to sit on my waist quite snug. And all of these elements that I mentioned, we can add them on later on because pockets are easy, the waistband is easy, zipper fly is easy. But while we are sort of in this finalizing stage, I need to see exactly what's going on without those elements being present. Now, to put my test garment together, I'm doing all of the same steps as I would if I was actually sewing a pair of pants. So I started with back darts, then I complete one leg, then the other leg, and then I place one inside of another and sew the crotch. If you need a reference for these steps, I have multiple videos on the channel and I will leave the links for you guys right underneath this video. Now, the only difference is that here I'm actually hand basting it with hand sewing needle and thread, because the only thing that I want to achieve with my test garment is to actually double check the fit and the look. You also see me work here with a muslin from another pair of pants, and I'm showing this to you so that way you can actually see what I'm doing, because on the other fabric it's really hard to see because of the dark colors. Alright, so let's take a look at what we have here. And here it is. Now, I must say that these feel very, very close to the original pair of pants that I was copying. So with that, I need to say that the mission is achieved. And they look very much the same as well. Obviously, without the pockets, waistband, and zipper fly. And I know it's a little bit hard to see the fit with this really bright print. So let me put these wrong side out so that way you can see a little bit better. I have a piece of white elastic that's secured on my waist. It's not attached to the actual pant. It's just there so that way it can keep the pants in place while I turn around for you. And with that, I think I'm ready to finalize this pattern. Now, here I also want to mention that whatever fit issues I had in the original pants, of course now all of those are copied into this new pattern. So I might finagle that around a little bit in the future. But for right now, this will do. Now for the zipper fly, I don't look inside of the pants. I just draft my own because I have a way that I like to do that and I think it gives the best result. And I like my zipper fly to be together with my pant pattern. Usually I do it about 1 inch wide, maybe sometimes a little bit wider. And it goes all the way up to where that pronounced curve of the crotch begins. And the fly shield with that is just a little bit longer and wider. I do have a very detailed tutorial on how to draft this and how to sew this together as well. So I will leave that for you guys right underneath this video. For the pocket, I'm going to copy the opening of the pocket, but after that, I'm just going to draft it the size that I need it to be, because oftentimes pockets and ready-to-wear pants are super small and they barely hold anything. But before you do whatever size that you want of the pocket, make sure that the size of the pocket agrees with the fit and the design of the pant. And our pocket is going to consist from 2 pattern pieces, the pocket bag that you won't be able to see, and then the other pocket bag that will complete the side seam of the pant that we folded under. Again, I do have a very detailed tutorial on how to draft and sew these, so I will leave this for you guys underneath this video. Same goes for the waistband. Most likely is just a rectangle minus the volume of the darts on the back pattern pieces, but don't forget to add for the zipper fly. However, it might be a curved waistband as well. And not to sound like a broken record, but I do have a very detailed video with 3 different types of waistbands and how to draft them. So again, I will leave that for you guys right underneath this video. Now, in a few weeks' time, we're actually going to sew these pants together. So if you want to see a finished garment, definitely give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and here's a video on how I managed to draft and sew this jacket right over here. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope that this was interesting and useful. And until next time, happy, thoughtful sewing. I'll see you very soon. Bye!